Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. And welcome once again to another edition of the Juice Box. I am Juice Springsteen. And this week, hopefully you guys already enjoyed the latest edition of the SIP series, my sit-down interview series, where I get to discuss pro wrestling fandom, pro wrestling in general, with anybody who's had pro wrestling in their lives at any point, whether they're a wrestler, a fan, they used to be a fan, anything. Anybody with any ties to wrestling at all, I'm trying to sit down and discuss it with them. And the first episode of the SIP series was Josh Taylor from 93.7 The Fan and KDKA, a Pittsburgh sports news kind of anchor all over the place. He, jack of all trades. And I worked with him at Trib Live Radio when I first worked with Justin LeBar, and he was kind enough to do that interview. And then this most recent one, we just released it this past week on Wednesday, was with the Rev, Ronell Hunt. The Rev is the RWA heavyweight champion who will be defending that championship tomorrow, I believe, in West Newton at the RWA show. Tommy Dreamer will be at that show as well. And it was great to talk to the Rev. We go back 6, 7, 8 years to Chairshot Reality, Squirrel Hill Sports Bar days. Like, this is almost really great studio days, for at least for me, at Point Park. And we had a great talk and, talked about his wrestling career, how him too, he is also a jack of all trades. He's, he was a working kayfabe paramedic on Raw. He's done magic tricks. He's a magician. He works with the food bank. He was a news anchor. He's a pro wrestler. I mean, he really does truly do it all. So, really cool to have the Rev on this week for the SIP series. I'm looking to gather some more guests as time rolls forward for the SIP series. I have some things trying to line up as we move closer to WrestleMania week. So a lot of stuff down the pike. We got Triple Threat Theater. Hopefully, we're going to record another episode of that very, very soon. Again, WrestleMania week, I'm trying to push forward a couple of episodes of different things, including, of course, the prediction show for both nights, which is always my favorite shows of the Juice Box, or the prediction shows, primarily because I get to work with great people involved, and it's really nice to kind of branch out outside of me just running down the current product, as it were, week by week. I like doing the SIP series. I love doing Triple Threat Theater. I love doing the predictions. I love kind of branching out, bouncing off other people, throwing ideas around, bantering about, the products. So we'll see how things kind of slide in as we get closer to WrestleMania. I mean, we are 9 days away as of this recording, although it'll be 8 by the time it's released, to Elimination Chamber, Perth, Australia, 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you're on the East Coast, like I am, of the United States, 5 a.m. is when that show is going to start. Who knows when it will finish, but it will be a very interesting show for sure. We'll tap into that. This episode in particular is really going to be a condensed episode, primarily because we had the SIP series this past week. But this week in general has been kind of slow in the wrestling of it all. Just going to kind of progress forward. Unfortunately, next week will be more of a highlighted show. We'll have, of course, the predictions for Elimination Chamber to run down. But The Rock and Roman Reigns being on SmackDown tonight, that is something that, of course, with this show airing on Friday, it's going to be difficult to see what's going to happen tonight. So I'm assuming there's going to be big ramifications from SmackDown tonight. So we can discuss that next week as we get closer to the Elimination Chamber. Because once Chamber is over, we are then just weeks away from the granddaddy of them all, WrestleMania in Philly, April 6th, April 7th, Lincoln Financial Field. It will be happening. So, yeah, condensed kind of episode today. We're going to end with some Ask Juice, specifically from Wrestling Nation. I kind of polled them to see what we got. Some questions I will answer. Some questions I probably won't. But we'll see. We'll see how crazy I get today. So, yeah, let's get through the obvious stuff. Juicy Steen on Twitter. You can also follow me on Instagram at Juicy Wrestling Closet. You can find all my vintage wrestling t-shirts, and I talk about wrestling on there as well. And I always, try to find the more rare shirts, find shirts that I'm trying to still on the hunt for probably 10 or less specific WCW pay-per-view shirts. I've compiled quite a few over the years, and I'm very close to being complete with everything from 1990 to 2001 when WCW folded. So if you want to check stuff like that out, Juicy Wrestling Closet is the way to go. If you really like what you hear, or if you would like to hear something better next week, potentially, subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts if you have the time. Also, swing by iTunes, leave a rating and review. It really does help the show. I appreciate all of you who do reach out, review the show, support the show, tweet about the show, any sort of assistance in helping this little ship stay afloat really is appreciated. So thank you. Additionally, Spotify and Google Podcasts, of course, is where you can find the Juice Box, and of course, juicysteen.podbean.com. But yeah, Spotify and Google as well. So Podbean, Google, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we're across the board here. So enough rambling. Crazy week for me personally. We really won't go into detail. But the Super Bowl kind of kicked off, literally, this week, and I was happy to see the Chiefs win. Even as a Raiders fan, it was tough, but hell of a game. My prediction was a little off. I said 30-21 Chiefs. It ended up being 25-22 Chiefs. So close enough. I was close last year too. So. You only get close, and it only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. So unfortunately, nothing really came out of it. But hell of a game. The WWE Legacy title was front and center in the locker room. Patrick Mahomes, Pacheco, Kelsey, everybody, had a hand in that title belt. So that's really cool branding for WWE. Again, as if they need it, they don't. But man, just a great football year, and it's over. So let's go to WrestleMania. But that's really how the week kind of kicked off. And then we had Raw. We'll kind of run down a little bit of that and lead into the Elimination Chamber Perth card as of now. And then we'll tackle a little Dynamite and get into a little bit more Revolution talk. See what the card is looking like on that side of things. Because the week after Elimination Chamber, we're at Revolution. So, we're really, coming in close, to these shows back to back. It's gonna be a really cool 2 weeks, a historic 2 weeks, as it were, because Sting's final match will be taking place at Revolution. Let's go to the Raw of it all. Because SmackDown last week really, no Cody. He was in a dark match after the show, which is okay, but no Rock, no Roman, no Cody last week on SmackDown. But of course, they will be there tonight on SmackDown. So that rating, by the way, the rating for an announced Rock and Roman appearance, Salt Lake City, the announcement of that ahead of time has got to put the ratings through the roof. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Will they touch 3 mil? That would be something, but I don't know if we'll see it. But we'll see. But Cody did show up. We'll get into that in a little bit as well. Jay Uso and the New Day defeated Imperium. So it does look like we could potentially get Jay Uso and Gunther. We've been discussing that for a while. And now, next week, we will get that match. So I'm looking forward to it. I don't know if Jay wins the match, though. I don't know if... I don't know. I just don't know who, to me, I'm not sure Jay Uso is the guy to take it from Gunther. I'm not sure, I don't know. Gunther could easily win the world title at WrestleMania, to me. I would buy it. It would make sense. Everything lines up. But to me, I think he has to not be Intercontinental Champion to do that. I just don't think they would stop both of those things. I think they'd like to have the big IC title loss moment. And then a Gunther pissed off, irate that he lost his championship. This iconic, long 600-day reign gone. And then he'd be incensed on beating someone up for that. So I think that should be the move, but I'm not sure if the timeline should be Gunther loses now, then maybe he gets in the chamber match, because that could happen. If Jey Uso defeats Gunther next week, there you go. I think Gunther would have a chance at making the chamber match, potentially getting a shot at Seth Rollins, and then winning the title. So I don't know. I at a point, I thought Chad Gable was the guy. I kind of agree that he could have been the guy, at least then. Now it seems like that momentum has tapered off. I definitely felt Gable could have pulled it off back, was it January? Was it January when that happened? I'm not even sure. Maybe December when that match happened. But I just feel as if he had a lot of momentum then, and now maybe it's stalled. Now it's, Jey Uso, main event Jey Uso's time. And I think he could be the guy. I do think he could be a viable guy to win the title. And then you set up an IC title match at WrestleMania between him and Jimmy. And it makes that match even bigger somehow, whenever we already thought, Jay versus Jimmy is a huge WrestleMania match. Years in the making. Well worth the wait. But if you implement an IC title in there, first of all, again, huge stakes, but it really makes me think that we could be ending up with none of the Bloodline losing the titles, and in fact, some of the Bloodline gaining titles to where everybody has a title. We'll get to that in a moment when we talk about Perth, because I have some fantasy booking that this has been the last 2 weeks. Twitter has been a blaze of just this booking decision, this fantasy idea. Meltzer's going to write 40 different outcomes, and maybe one will become correct. There's been and on the flip side, there's the AEW of the Twitter, where if you're not watching Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage every single week religiously, and then, if you don't watch them every week and you only watch Dynamite, and then on Dynamite, some of the storylines seem a little lesser than because there's some plot holes, you will get rabid AEW fans. God love them. I want rabid fans as a fan base. AEW, rabid fans saying, hey, if you just watched all three, if you just watched Rampage and Collision clips on YouTube, if you had time, because we know you have time. There's no way you don't have time. then you'll understand. You'll be able to watch. You'll get it all. You'll really, really understand AEW. The storylines won't have plot holes. So between that and this insane fantasy booking of like everybody throwing out crazy ideas, it's great. This is the best time to be a fan. I mean, everybody has an opinion. That's why I have this show. You know, this show is by a fan for the fans. And I'm talking about fans, you know, going off, going crazy, going back and forth. This is what I want. This is what WWE wants. You know, they want people talking. They want the anticipation built up. They want uncertainty. They want that built up anticipation for an event, whether they promote it or not, because WWE will promote that event. You know, of course, they're going to promote Elimination Chamber. They're going to promote WrestleMania. WrestleMania is sold out. They don't even need to promote it. But having the additional, you know, hype and just chaos of this should happen, and what if this guy beats this guy, but then they changed this, and was this really a pivot, or was this the plan all along, and was it a work? Was it a shoot? There's just so many things that have been just compiled all together in this just wave of the last 2 weeks, really since the Cody Rhodes, here you go, Rock, take my match at WrestleMania moment on SmackDown. Ever since then, it's been chaos. Like, the week from Rumble to SmackDown was fine. Everything seemed fine. And then it just turned. And now WWE seems to be leaning into it. We're going to get The Rock at Mania. Will we get a tag match? What are we going to get? We'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, it's just the amount of stuff that's been going on over the last couple weeks has been unbelievable. And very exciting, I gotta admit. It's also very exciting at the end of the day. Whether you're a fan of AEW, WWE, neither, both, you're a Bloodline guy, you're a We Want Cody guy, it doesn't matter. Like, these are, if you're a CM Punk guy, Josh Cross, you know, unfortunately you won't have him, at least in a wrestling capacity at WrestleMania, but I've got some ideas I might be able to sprinkle in regards to that. I think we'll tackle some fantasy booking of WrestleMania at the Ask Juice segment, because I really don't want to dig too deep into it on the Raw side without the SmackDown part of it. So I think there's a question regarding The Rock, Roman, Cody, all that. So I'll talk about that when we get to that point of the show. But until then, we'll just roll through the rest of the Raw and get into what's going to happen at Perth. JD McDonough got a victory over R-Truth, and then they beat down R-Truth, featuring a return, or, you know, a save by Ciampa, Gargano, DIY. Seems like them involved with R-Truth could lead to a six-man, so it will be really cool. Becky Lynch cut a promo talking about, you know, how she's really dedicated to pro wrestling. She really, you know, it's basically hyping her up for Perth. Like, this is her chance to, you know, do it again. Go to WrestleMania again. Get this thing done. Rhea Ripley, though, takes exception to that, you know, and came into the ring, and there was a huge brawl, a brouhaha, if you will. Nia Jax was in there as well, because we're going to get Rhea and Nia Jax at the Chamber. I believe it should main event the show. Don't know if it will, but I believe it should. I mean, why wouldn't you want that? You're going to have the person facing Rhea winning. Well, let's assume Rhea Ripley is the champ after Perth, right? It's pretty much assumed. So then the winner of the Chamber would face her. Do you want Rhea to retain early in the night, have the women's match close the night, and have a, you know, like a one-on-one type face-off, you know, where it's like, hey, it's me, it's you, this is it, this is the match, and you have a stare down. You could do that on Raw, of course, but Or do you have the women's match happen? Whoever wins, Becky wins, and the main event is Nia and Rhea. Rhea wins, and not only do you get the pop of Rhea winning, it's solidified in her home country, and it's solidifying in her home country that she's going to main event, well, maybe not main event, but wrestle at WrestleMania as world champion, defending her championship, and then you get Becky coming out to have that moment face-to-face. I feel like we're going to get the men's chamber maybe last, but there's also apparently a Grayson Waller effect with Cody and Seth at the show. So, star power being added, no need for a match. Curious, and you get Grayson Waller on the show as well. So I'm really liking that dynamic in particular. Don't know, though, if, again, will the chamber match happen before that? Like, I don't know how you close it. And how the best way would be to close it. I still think Nia and Rhea, but we'll get there. But Rhea Ripley is so over right now. It is going to be very, I want to say interesting because I'm not sure that they'll do it so soon, but maybe that's the better way to phrase it. I'm interested in how the Rhea Ripley face turn eventually occurs, whether that's as champion or not. I think it's pretty simple how they go about it. Dom Mysterio is arguably the biggest heel in WWE, definitely for the Judgment Day, definitely on Raw, and you can't get a word in edgewise in promos. So Rhea Ripley, even though she, Dom and Mommy, if Mommy is upset that she lost a title or this or that, and maybe Finn and Priest lose their titles, and Money in the Bank doesn't get cashed in, and maybe Dom pisses her off, and there's so many ways that all Mommy needs to do is kind of turn on Dom, and you get an eruptive audience reaction. So, and that's it. They're cheering her anyway. She's going to be a face anyway at some point. So you'd think, hey, let's turn her. But not yet, not the moment. LA Knight and Ivar, also referred to as the Brian Dipperstein match for survival, because the disdain for LA Knight and the love for Ivar, Brian Dipperstein being a Cheap Heat podcast host there on that program with Peter Rosenberg. Big fan of Ivar, and he, for a while, was not really a big fan of the LA Knight thing, but seems like he's thinking LA Knight's best for business. So this match was a fun one to watch, having that in mind, but LA Knight gets the win. He's going to the chamber. So I will go over the card in a moment and let you know who's in it in regards to that. Main event, Sami Zayn, Shinsuke Nakamura. First of all, they did a great promo seg of Sami Zayn in an empty arena. I think it was with Jackie Redmond. And Shinsuke Nakamura pops up on the screen doing more of the great, anime-based, manga-based, subtitles, promo, cutting Zayn down, and this match was great. It was great. Shinsuke gets the win with the Kinshasa. And, of course, it was not nearly the caliber of the 2016 NXT TakeOver Dallas match between the two. Story time with Juice Springsteen. Let's rewind a little bit. 2015, I graduate college. I get an internship at Trib Live Radio, and I start working with Josh Taylor. Start working with Justin LeBar. By June, that was May. I graduated, so this is a month in. June or July, I'm working with LeBar. We're doing NXT. We were going to do interviews the night of the NXT show in Pittsburgh, and Dusty Rhodes passes away. That day, I remember exactly where we were sitting. just in the afternoon before that. So that happens. I go to SummerSlam that year with LeBar and Eisenberg, and that was like one of the first. That was when I met JD from New York, 2015 SummerSlam. I mean, I cannot believe it's been so long. It'll be 9 years this August or July. Had a great time in New York. Went to a bar called the Dead Poet. Love that place. But all that aside, then flip to 2016. I'm going to my first WrestleMania, and I'm working with LeBar. I got to be the video guy for some WrestleMania Access interviews. The Miz, Neville, shout out Josh Cross, and just all around great time interviewing some people, getting a sense of WrestleMania for the first time for me. Being in Dallas, it was just a great time, great weekend, an amazing trip overall, and we're at Access. So I've also gone, I'm going through all the Hall of Fame stuff. I'm looking at like Sting's ring gear from '94 Spring Stampede, one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time. And of course, we're going to talk Sting retiring later on here in a little bit. So just all this ties together. I'm a huge Sting mark as well. So, I mean, he was my favorite. He's my favorite all-time wrestler. And so seeing all this stuff, it was just a rush of all these things happening 2016, right? And we're standing at Access. And I couldn't pick this guy out of a lineup. You could tell me 100 names, and I would have said, it could have been any of those names of who this guy was. But he just was like a WWE, like official, just a guy that worked with WWE. Comes up to both of us. He talks to LeBar, and he's like, hey, you going to NXT tonight? And he's like, I think he was just like, we had considered it. We really hadn't, went ahead and got tickets yet. But we definitely had considered it. And he's like, oh, well, if you want to go, we'll make it happen. And so, LeBar and him are talking, and I am just like, take the tickets. Come on, what are you doing? Let's go. In my head, of course, I'm not marking out like crazy. But inside, I cannot hold this together. I'm just like, please just say, let's go. Because I know that, lo and behold, I mean, we had Samoa Joe versus Finn Balor. Finn Balor coming out with the chainsaw in Texas. Unbelievable. Especially, I'm a horror movie fan. 2024, this is 50 years since the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I could tie all this stuff together, baby. That match was great. We had the Revival and American Alpha in one of the best tag matches you'll ever see. And we also had Shinsuke Nakamura debuting in, the WWE umbrella for NXT, going against Sami Zayn. I'm a guy who was a huge El Generico and Kevin Steen fan. So Sami Zayn being in NXT in 2014 and Kevin Owens being there through the college years. I remember watching that match with Josh Cross, among others, before he went out to PSB at 925, where, Kevin Owens debuts against the future Juice Robinson, as a matter of fact. Shout out Juice Robinson, no affiliation. And by the end of the night, he turns on Sami Zayn, and I was so heartbroken. I was so happy that that happened. I'm like, you can't be friends. They have to be enemies. And immediately, by the end of it, he did. He turned on him. So all these things, and I'm a huge, at this point in my fandom, I'm a huge indie guy. I'm watching Ring of Honor. That's how I got into the Young Bucks, which ties that in. They're going to probably retire Sting. It's crazy how this all ties together. And Young Bucks and all that, and I'm into New Japan. I watched a couple of Wrestle Kingdoms when it was AJ Styles and Nakamura. That was the first Wrestle Kingdom I watched. So January of 2016, I'm watching the Royal Rumble with Matt Presto, best man at his wedding. He'll, I'm sure, be on the Juice Box in some capacity in the future. AJ Styles debuts in the Royal Rumble. Nakamura was not far behind. And WrestleMania weekend, NXT, Shinsuke, Sami Zayn, the match tore the house down. I had goosebumps literally the entire match. The crowd was just like always buzzing that like this match was happening. It wasn't like just general cheers. It was just like, can you believe this is happening? Can you believe these guys are wrestling? It was such a game-changing moment for NXT, for WWE, to be like, look at this guy coming in. He didn't change his name. He has the same aura about him. Everybody here kind of knows him somehow. Like, it was a great presentation of him. This match on Raw was not that match. It was great, though. I thought it was a really great match to end Raw, but to tie all that together was just, I went on a little rant there, but that I could not help but all those memories flooded back, just even seeing the match of that weekend and tying it back to all those times, the 2015, 2016, when I really pushed forward into the wrestling scope after kind of just being a YouTube guy for a very long time. But outside of that, so Sami Zayn, Nakamura, Drew McIntyre, definitely a lot of depth, I would say, in the main event scene for Raw. Of course, Cody being number one, although he's on SmackDown now. So, assuming Cody wins the title, I don't even know why I'm saying that. I can't assume that Cody's going to win the title. Let's just, for the sake of this argument, Cody goes to SmackDown. Sure, they could trade someone over to Raw, but regardless, you've got Nakamura, McIntyre, Sami Zayn. CM Punk's going to come back, you know. You got a lot of depth on the Raw roster. Gunther, Jay Uso, the guys in Judgment Day. There's a lot of depth there. So, of course, Seth Rollins, but I assume he loses the title at Mania. He'll get surgery, and that'll be that for a bit. But the depth on Raw is really good, really strong, and deep. So I think it'll be nice. Maybe after WrestleMania, we'll see some guys step up. We'll get to see a Shinsuke maybe challenge again for a world title. And I'm looking forward to the post-Mania of it all to kind of see how it shakes out. Hey, 2 weeks after WrestleMania, SmackDown, April 19th in Pittsburgh, PPG Paints Arena. Be there. We will have more details at Ticketmaster.com. But yeah, the Juice Box will be, of course, represented there very well. Wrestling Nation will be there. It'll be a fun time, hell of a time, as always, with those guys. And I think some of those guys will be at WrestleMania. We'll get talking about all that stuff as we get closer. But next week on Raw, though, Jay Uso, Gunther, IC title. Will it happen? I don't know. We'll find out by the time this next pod comes out, next Friday, of course, before the Chamber. Although it might get released a little earlier because it's a prediction show, and considering the show is the PLE's on Saturday morning here, I might release it a little earlier. But there will be a pod next week, of course, for that. So we'll see. But by then, we'll know, is Gunther still champ or not? Cody Rhodes versus Drew McIntyre next week. It's practically a main event on any PLE. So Jey Uso and Gunther, Cody and Drew, DIY and R-Truth versus the Judgment Day, and then a last chance battle royal to fill the final spot in the Women's Elimination Chamber match. All those things are practically a PLE, a mini, like a domestic PLE, like Payback or Fastlane was this year or last year. So with those things on the table, I think it sets up for a nice show. I don't know if they're going to combat the SmackDown of it all, but SmackDown's got The Rock and Roman right now, and the hottest storyline's cooking, literally, pun intended. But it's nice because, Cody won't wrestle in Perth. Seth's not wrestling in Perth. They get a segment with Grayson Waller, but Gunther, some of these guys just won't be there. So it'd be nice to see a solid, strong, go-home episode of Raw. Let's get to the Perth card as it stands. So, as I said, Grayson Waller effect, Elimination Chamber edition, Cody Rhodes and World Champion Seth freaking Rollins will be there. Wondering what they'll do. Again, we'll talk about that once we get to the Ask Juice segment. But we got Finn Balor, Damian Priest taking on British Strong Style, Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate. That might be match of the night, quite honestly. So, looking forward to that. Undisputed tag titles. Elimination Chamber match for the Women's World title match opportunity at Mania. Becky Lynch, Bianca Belair, Liv Morgan, and 3 to be determined. Which I believe, I don't know if we have the rest. Okay, the 4th and 5th matches will be tonight, actually. Tiffany Stratton versus Zelina Vega, and Alba Fire taking on Naomi. So, I'm going to say probably Naomi, probably Tiffany Stratton, which is a loaded 5 women for the Elimination Chamber, let alone, there's going to be a Battle Royal last chance. Who's going to be that last entrant into the chamber? That should be a hell of a match. Winner takes on the winner of Nia Jax and Rhea Ripley. I think that match should close the show, but we'll see. And then Drew McIntyre, Randy Orton, Bobby Lashley, L.A. Knight, and 2 other opponents. Either Dirty Dom Mysterio or Kevin Owens. They're facing off tonight on SmackDown. And either Logan Paul or The Miz, who's going to have a match on SmackDown. Is that Logan Paul's first match on WWE TV? I'm going to check that out, as a matter of fact. That's pretty... I just had a revelation there. Let's see his just win-loss record in general. Profile match listings. Yeah, he's done. He's literally only wrestled at PLEs. Mania 38, Night 1. SummerSlam 22. Crown Jewel 22. Rumble match in 23. Mania 39, Night 1. Money in the Bank 23. SummerSlam 23. Crown Jewel. And then Royal Rumble. So, damn. That's pretty nice. That's pretty cool. Logan Paul wrestling. Logan Paul on SmackDown, wrestling on a match on SmackDown, plus Rock and Roman being advertised. They might hit 3 million. I'm holding out hope. I think it'd be crazy if they got 3 million. But so either Miz or Logan Paul, and either KO or Mysterio will be in the chamber match. Right now, I think it's still Drew's match to lose. Although I wouldn't hate LA Knight or Orton if indeed the winner of this match ends up winning and taking the title from Seth Rollins. If that's the goal, I think it'd be really cool if either of those guys were, the one. Let's get to some Dynamite stuff real quick before we hit and close out with Ask Juice. This was an interesting show. The Dynamite of it all. They kind of set up, the triple threat match with Joe, Hangman, and Swerve. Next week, I do believe... Let me check this out. I think next week is a 6-man tag. I'll get that for sure here in a moment. But we had a couple matches here. Dax Harwood, John Moxley, I thought was a solid match. John Moxley, of course, getting the win. I really like Dax's sharpshooter. Him and FTR and Bret Hart really have a nice connection together, and I don't hate it. If you can put on a great sharpshooter, I'm looking at you, Dwayne. Then you should. But some people cannot do the sharpshooter very well, or the Scorpion Deathlock for that matter. Wardlow annihilated someone. What's new? I don't know. I'm so disappointed with the Undisputed Kingdom. Although, out of left field, Matt Taven put on one hell of a show in the main event. We'll get there in a moment. But it just sucks. I think the Adam Cole getting injured thing just threw off everything. And it's been tough to gain that back. Yeah, I don't know. So we'll see. But no contest in a match that could have pit either Daniel Garcia or Adam Copeland versus Christian Cage. But it was definitely a no contest. So I don't know what's going to happen next week. Actually, I can check that out. Yeah. Let's see if we can... check that out. Yes. Okay, so we will get BCC, Claudio and John Moxley versus FTR next week, and we will also get Hook, Hangman Page, and RVD taking on Samoa Joe, Swerve Strickland, and Brian Cage. Now, not necessarily thinking that, I think a lot of people were kind of upset that Swerve and Joe are going to team together. Like, it doesn't make sense. Although, to me, it might make sense, because if the match is to crown Swerve, I think Swerve could absolutely win by pinning Joe, or pissing off, like turning on Joe, making Joe feel like he's on his side or doing dirty work, because Joe knows that Swerve hates Hangman, but it might cost him. And I think if Swerve, it's just perfect, because then if Swerve wins the title, Swerve has Hangman as an immediate challenger. You're off to the races. Double or nothing. Give me Hangman. Give me Swerve in a title match. That would be... oh, man, that'd be great. Top Flight versus the AEW EVPs, Matthew and Nicholas Jackson. Of course, the Young Bucks get the win. Still wearing the blood-soaked suits from last week's beatdown of Darby Allin and Sting. Darby had a little bit of a promo there, and I'm going to be critical. Everybody was critical when it happened. I'm going to be critical now that after it's happened. But Darby, comes out and really is upset. Of course, he's upset with what happened last week. But Darby instead, kind of references that, hey, not all the EVPs were like terrible guys, kind of referring that Cody is, was a guy, I'm not talking about Kenny Omega either. Like, Cody is some, the best that came from the original EVPs. It's just, and they got a huge cheer and Cody chants. But this is an episode of AEW Dynamite. Not Raw, not SmackDown. Cody is on the other channel. And they got to cheer for him on AEW TV when you're trying to promote 4 other guys. So, I know what Darby was going for, and I just think it could have been done differently. I also think that he should have had more fire in a promo a week after getting his ass handed to him from the Young Bucks. You're going to talk about Cody instead? That's what's on your mind? The guys that just beat your ass last week are wearing suits with your blood on them a week later and wrestling in them. And you choose to say, yeah, well, Cody's a better guy than you guys are. He's a better EVP. So suck on that, Young Bucks. I don't know. I'm looking forward to the match. We'll talk about Revolution here in a moment. I think it's going to be unbelievably, just... So the last... We'll kind of turn this to sports for a moment. The last 5 minutes of the Super Bowl in the fourth quarter and then the entirety of the overtime period, my heart was racing with just especially Niners get the field goal, Chiefs have the ball, they have to get at least a field goal, but they get a 4th and 1. If they get stopped, it's over. Of course, Mahomes takes it himself because who else would have the ball in that situation? But I'm going to have that type of palpable feeling of nervousness for this Sting match at Revolution because it's the end. You also don't know if he's going to go out on top by retaining the titles or losing, which would be terrible. It could happen. It's wrestling. They don't care. So we'll see. But Willow Nightingale got a win over Sky Blue. I have to see how the women's matches are shaping up at Revolution. I'm really not sure. I think they're kind of in a outside of the Toni Storm, Deonna Purrazzo of it all. I'm not sure what else is going to be kind of thrown in there. Because they got, again, the women's roster in AEW is so, like, again, depth is so insane, and they just don't. Maybe I'm not watching Collision or Rampage enough to see all the women's wrestling because I only watch Dynamite most weeks. I catch Collision. It's Saturday night. If I'm home, Rampage comes on at God knows when, and I work on Saturdays. I work 6 days a week, so it is tough for me to want to stay up on Friday to watch Rampage to keep up with that. And again, if the women didn't have just the 9:30 p.m. slot on Dynamite, maybe I would have a different feeling about it. But such is life. Main event, though, damn. Orange Cassidy, Matt Taven, Texas Deathmatch. I don't know what I was anticipating, but this was unbelievable. The international title was not on the line, and this was a chaotic match. Blood, tables, tacks, steel pipes. Matt Taven with a insane dive spot over the top rope through a table that was propped up by the legs on one leg of the table. Two legs of the table were on the floor. The other two legs were propped up on the announce table. So it was tilted diagonally facing the ring, and Taven flies out and goes straight through the thing, destroying like partial portions of the announce table as well. Just a brutal spot, but props to him. He really showed me something. I saw Matt Taven win the ladder match at Madison Square Garden, the New Japan Ring of Honor Super Show back in 2019, which was a hell of a night, hell of a match, hell of a show. But man, that was amazing, that spot. So Orange Cassidy gets the win, though, and I thought that was a good end of the show. So one of the better Dynamites, I would say. Last week was really strong. Hopefully next week they can really put forth more, because the following week is the go home to Revolution, where everything has to really come together. But let's go over the Revolution card real quick before we get to the Ask Juice segment and close out the show. Orange Cassidy defending the international title against Roderick Strong of the Undisputed Kingdom. Samoa Joe, Hangman Adam Page, Swerve Strickland, three-way match, AEW World title on the line. Can't wait for that. Continental Crown title, which is Continental Championship, Ring of Honor World Championship, and the New Japan Strong Openweight Championship. Eddie Kingston defends against Bryan Danielson. Danielson wins. He gets the Continental Crown Championship. If Bryan Danielson were to lose, he has to shake Eddie Kingston's hand. So, sportsmanship is the theme of that match, which I don't hate. It's nice to have that sometimes. So let's have it. Timeless Toni Storm, Deonna Purrazzo, singles match, AEW Women's World title. The feud is based on a tattoo that they both got, but I'm here for real life, legitimate, truth-based storylines that are based in real life aspects of characters on screen. And then potentially match of the night that just got announced out of nowhere. Will Ospreay versus Konosuke Takeshita. Unbelievable. Takeshita and Ospreay are two of the best high-flying, technically sound workers in pro wrestling. And I believe this will be Will Ospreay's first pay-per-view match as an AEW talent, like a signed AEW talent, I think. And for it to be against Takeshita. Could you imagine if Takeshita wins this match? If Takeshita wins this match, Takeshita should go for the world title the following week. But I do think Will Ospreay will win. It'll just be a hell of a match. So, hold our horses there. Let's close out with some Ask Juice. A lot of these are just from Josh Cross, so I'll just kind of rattle off the questions, whether it's him or not. What's your high score in bowling? I think my highest score in bowling was like it honestly might have been like 222 or 225. I bowled, Matt Presto can attest, he bowled as well. He bowled with two hands, a very unique bowling style. But there's some pros that do that, so he's kind of ahead of his time. I would bowl I was 14 and 15 when I bowled in a youth league. And every Saturday morning, Matt's cousin Vinny, Matt's cousin Vinny, was a bowler, and I, being friends with those guys, I was like, I love bowling. Bowling's great. It's one of my favorite sports to play, and recreational activity in general. And started to bowl, and I was in a league. I was on a team with Matt Presto, and we actually won the title that year, which was really cool. But I was pretty good for a while. Vinny was way better than me. He's been unbelievable at bowling his entire life. So I could never really touch his acumen for the lanes. But I did make it to the Pepsi State tournament out in Allentown, PA, as a 16-year-old. So that was pretty cool. But outside of that, that's really it. So I was good before, but I ain't as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. Shout out, R.I.P. Toby Keith, TNA legend, Toby Keith. But I think 222 or like 225, I think, was my high game in bowling. It's been a while since I've hit that mark, but I definitely think that was it. And I don't know if I could go against fellow chair shot reality host and Juicebox contributor Josh Eisenberg. I know he's a frequent bowler. I haven't bowled with him. I love to bowl with him, so that's something I'd like to tackle. I'm not sure if I could handle him or not, but I'd have to get back in the swing of things and see what would happen. We'll do the Rock Roman one last. In your opinion, what was the best set of Happy Meal / kids meal toys from McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's? I was always partial to the crossovers of like Pokemon or Rugrats. I had the Rugrats watches. I had Rugrats figures. I had I had the Pokemon 24 karat gold like plated cards that were inside the Pokeballs. The Beanie Babies from McDonald's at a point were huge. There was a lot. So many different like toy related items. There honestly weren't any like WWE related like fast food crossover things, especially not in the Happy Meal, like in the kids realm, which is crazy as hell. But I clearly they didn't need to, because I was getting plenty of wrestling content outside of it. But I was a huge proprietor. Burger King was such a huge... Burger King really was at the forefront of fast food in the late 90s, in my opinion. Early 2000s, their commercials were really strong too. I think they've kind of turned things around the last 3 or 4 years, especially with the newest commercial jingles that they've been throwing out there. I think they've been very catchy, and that's been their real strong suit. So they should be always doing stuff like that, and reaching outside the box or outside the bun, Taco Bell. But just any crossover, like Rugrats, like I said, Pokemon. I'm trying to think of like a SpongeBob, definitely some toys that crossed over through there. Nothing else really that I can recall that was so, unless I'm missing something glaringly. I also just loved any of the Nickelodeon ones, like the Kids' Choice Awards with Burger King, and I got the orange blimp, that like the award that they would give out at the Kids' Choice Awards. I love those shows. I was such a huge fan of those. It was unbelievable. Like I would literally make it. It was appointment viewing as like a 7-year-old to watch the 2000 or 2001 Kids' Choice Awards. Like God, like Rosie O'Donnell would host it, and no relation to Neil O'Donnell, But I would sit there, and it was like the Oscars for me. I swear to God, it was unbelievable how invested I was back then. But I cared about kids' TV. Like Nickelodeon was at the forefront of it. Nickelodeon was the WWE of kids programming. Like I loved Cartoon Network and just shows on other stations. But I mean, Nickelodeon had Rugrats, SpongeBob, Doug, Rocko's Modern Life, Ren and Stimpy, Cat Dog, Rocket Power, Wild Thornberries, as told by Ginger, Hey Arnold. God, you could rattle off so many shows that stand the test of time. So, if there was a third member of the Headbangers, what would his name be? So there was Mosh and Thrasher. What would another name be? You mosh in a mosh pit. You thrash around in a mosh pit. There's also thrash metal. I don't know. What else? What other things do you do in a mosh pit? There's there's like a wall of death. Waller, Grayson Waller. I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not really sure. There could have been. Maybe that's why they're just a tag team. They never could have fought for the trios titles, I guess. Because I'm kind of stumped. So if you have one, be my guest. Tweet at me at JuicySteen. If there was a third member of the Headbangers, what would their name be? Maybe I'll post that out there. See if someone has an idea. Maybe there'll be a third one. I don't know. And then I'm going to really try to condense this answer because I could go on for hours. But we'll save that for when we get closer to WrestleMania. But would you rather have The Rock be the special guest referee in a Cody versus Roman match at Mania, where Roman gets frustrated with The Rock during the match, leading to The Rock turning on Roman? Or should The Rock just win the Elimination Chamber and face Seth Rollins instead? So, of course, unfortunately, SmackDown is tonight, and there's 2 more spots left in the chamber, and there's 2 more matches, left. Rock and Roman are going to be there. I think there's a real chance The Rock somehow either inserts himself in the chamber match because he's a part of the TKO board, whether it's because he wants to, or, hey, for instance, Logan Paul and The Miz went to a no contest. Well, I guess no one's going to be in the match. I guess I can be in the match, Something like that. Let's say that happens. Why not? Why couldn't he? And I'll get you if that happens, hold on. What was the other part of that? The special guest referee. I think he could. I think The Rock could be the referee for the match. But that almost requires, because right now it definitely seems like Rock and Roman are tied. The bloodline, they seem on the same page for now. I know there's 50 days left to Mania, so there's definitely, there's definitely time from now until Mania for things to get messed up or change to where, oh boy, Rock hates Roman, Roman hates Rock, we'll get a match, whatever. But I really think they're going to stay together, at least even until Mania. People are throwing around this tag match of Rock, Roman versus Cody and Seth on night 1, which helps nobody if you do it, because someone has to take a loss. You're not going to have a no contest. And then assuming potentially all 4 of those guys could be wrestling the following night, you really want to have someone going into the night 2 with less momentum, unless we combine it. Unless Rock somehow gets the match, it's Rock and Seth Rollins, and on night 2, and it's Cody and Roman on night 2, and you get the tag match on night 1, and then it leads to night 2. But I just still think Rock working 2 matches in 2 nights is a lot to ask The Rock for not wrestling a huge full-length match in over 10 years. To ask him to do 2, I don't think so. So here's my potential option here. Somehow, if The Rock gets into the chamber, let's assume he can. Or if somehow he doesn't and Drew wins, but The Rock finds his way. Here's what I'm thinking. This is a particular scenario I've been thinking about. What if you get Seth versus The Rock versus Drew, night 1, Roman versus Cody on night 2. CM Punk, whether he could be on commentary that night, because I think that's a smart play, is to have CM Punk on commentary. If he cannot wrestle at WrestleMania, he did the pre-show, or not pre-show, he did the panel for the entire hour of the WrestleMania kickoff press conference. He did a great job. He was taking shots at Seth, at Cody, at Rock, at everybody. He was being honest. He was being himself. That's what I want. If you can't wrestle, you have other tools. Let's utilize those tools. So have Punk maybe be on commentary. CM Punk costs Seth Rollins the title. Rock wins the title. Following night, Seth is pissed. He wants to even the score. He costs Cody Rhodes after saying he'd back him. Roman retains. So you get the bloodline. And if Jimmy and Jay Uso happen on night 1, and Jay Uso loses the Intercontinental title, if the Intercontinental title's on the line, if Jay Uso defeats Gunther, Jimmy Uso could win the IC title. The Rock could be world champion. Roman Reigns could be Universal Undisputed Heavyweight Champion. You could have the bloodline holding all those titles at the end of WrestleMania. At Backlash, you get The Rock versus Drew McIntyre, because Drew got screwed out of night 1. Let's say The Rock pinned Seth because Punk cost him. Drew's like, hey, I didn't get pinned. I still have a chance because maybe he won the chamber. A lot of this stuff is all fantasy, but this is how I'm going. So you get Rock versus Drew McIntyre, and you get Punk versus Seth versus Cody, 2 separate matches at Backlash in France. And then all that leads eventually, with whether it's Money in the Bank or what have you. And again, all this is predicated on The Rock working at least a year. Because I don't see, if he doesn't work anything other than this WrestleMania and that's it, I think that's a complete waste. He shouldn't have even done this. He has the time. I know, he's the biggest movie star in the world. He's got a lot of other stuff to do than just pal around with, Roman and the Bloodline all day and every week on TV. And he wouldn't be there every week, but he could do so many things. He could do, there could be a moment where, I'm going to, Cody, you're not allowed to even be out here. Cody wants to say something and The Rock can interrupt him via screen and be like, hey, you're not scheduled tonight. You got to go home. I'm part of the TKO board. This is what we're doing. Get out of here. There's so many different avenues to travel with that. So, assuming The Rock wrestles at least the whole calendar year, and not every show, but he will work multiple times from now until Mania 41 and including Mania 41, assuming he's healthy or whatever. If that's the case, Rock versus Drew at Backlash, Punk, Seth, Cody at Backlash, whatever happens with Money in the Bank, in between then in Toronto, you get The Rock versus CM Punk at SummerSlam, and then you get, for the World Heavyweight title, and then September 13th, Madison Square Garden, Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns. Roman had surpassed Hogan by then by I think a day or two. Cody wins the undisputed WWE title in the building that his father had the title in his hands. It's convoluted. It's Russo-esque. It's fantasy. It's assuming The Rock works all the way to Mania 41. It's assuming a lot of stuff. But that's what I would do if I had the pen. But I don't have the pen. Take the pen. So, who knows? I don't know what the most logical outcome is, but I'm here for the ride. I am excited for it, even though I am not upset, but I'm just it's so annoying that WWE had to clearly pivot from the outrage of the We Want Cody thing, and now this is what they're going with, which is fine. Lean into it. I want corporate Rock. Give me a heel Rock. He's the best. But hopefully it pans out and turns out how they want, because it should have been a certain way this whole time. And now that they had to pivot, now we're back to where we started. Let's finish multiple stories, please. So, thanks to Wrestling Nation for those Ask Juice questions. I'm sure I'll be asking to pal around for some more questions as we go further. I said this is going to be a condensed episode, and it's potentially one of the longer solo episodes I've done thus far, but that's what happens when it's WrestleMania season, baby. You get hyped. You get very hyped for the show of shows. So without further ado, let's close up shop as we always do here on the Juice Box. Follow me on Twitter at Juicy Steen, at Juicy Wrestling Closet on Instagram. Subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, and if you do have a little bit of time, swing by iTunes, leave a rating and review. That would really help the show out. I appreciate the support so far. In addition to that, Google Podcasts, you can find this show, juicysteen.podbean.com. You can find the Juice Box, and now on Spotify. You want to listen to some new records, some new albums. You want to listen to the Juice Box on the same platform, but you use Spotify instead of Apple. Go right ahead and throw on the Juice Box in Spotify, and you can listen to me there. So, great, fun show. A lot of fun discussing all this stuff. We've got a lot coming up. Hopefully down the pike, a lot more interesting Sip Series episodes, some Triple Threat Theater. Of course, some prediction shows the next couple of weeks with Revolution and Elimination Chamber in Perth, of course. So keep up to date with all the socials. We're talking wrestling pretty much every day. This is the best time to be a wrestling fan, especially with both these companies just really trying to do the best they can. We have potentially Mercedes Moné coming in too. Like, there's a lot going on, so this is a great time to be a wrestling fan, and this show is for fans by a fan. So hope you guys enjoyed the Juice Box this week. I am Juice Springsteen. I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend, and looking forward to next week's episode of the Elimination Chamber PLE Prediction Show right here on the Juice Box. That was the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to the Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.